The digital revolution has irreversibly shifted our everyday lives, from e-commerce to digital entertainment. This transformation raises questions, however. Have we crossed an invisible line? Have we potentially embraced this technological transformation too quickly? At the forefront of this ongoing debate is virtual reality.
Virtual reality describes technologies which seek to temporarily swap our physical world with a digital one. This three-dimensional environment is physically interactive and simulated via computers. Head-mounted displays, or HMDs, display the virtual reality, often accompanied by spatial audio device and haptics. Together, these independent technologies produce an immersive user experience.
In 1935, Stanley Weinbaum wrote Pygmalion Spectacles, one of the first science fiction novels discussing VR as we recognize it today, and considered its potential for escapism. By the 18th century, however, virtual reality's evolution had already begun, starting with panoramic paintings, enormous 360-degree murals which created a sense of presence for the user at depicted events. In 1968, the University of Utah created the Sword of Damocles, the first computer-driven HMD developed by Ivan Sutherland. It displayed wireframe imagery. Even this headset, however, was predated by film-operated immersion kits like Morton Heilig's Sensorama, a full-body VR cabinet.
VR has already changed gaming, with firms like Meta and Apple investing heavily in their own retail HMDs. Additionally, in 2024, the FDA authorized 69 medical devices harnessing VR, primarily in radiology and orthopedics. STEM education is already experimenting with VR technologies, and the result merits consideration.
Human experience in learning is inherently sensory and therefore visual and hands-on. Our earliest achievements, fire, agriculture, and stone tools predate any written language or codified education system by millennia. To practice and mimic is human. It's a trait which allowed us to harness fire and chart the stars. This disposition for experiential learning is reflected on an evolutionary level. 30% of the brain's cortex relates to visual processing, and studies show auditory instruction suffers in comparison to kinesthetic or visual learning. Emotionally, our species' earliest values, hopes, and fears were communicated through story. Gilgamesh, the Iliad, and Shakespeare. When Plato fostered curiosity in Athens, he told of the cave, encouraging his students to look beyond it. Why then can't America do the same for our next generation of leaders, scientists, and thinkers? Unfortunately, this wiring for experiential learning and affinity for storytelling has been downplayed in the modern classroom, with standardized instruction focused on explicit knowledge in vogue. VR offers a chance to unlock this enormous latent potential to enhance the learning outcomes of tomorrow, today.
Imagine complex scientific principles such as hypertension can be explained and demonstrated to students in a virtual immersive environment. Arizona State University dares to imagine exactly that future.
By harnessing VR software toolkits like those in Blender or Unity Engine, educators can become creators. Storytelling, an educational tool since humanity's earliest days, can return to the classroom by harnessing software. Advancements in the software space enable quicker content creation and refined user input processing, important metrics for our increasingly complex classroom needs.
ASU, in partnership with Dreamscape Immersive, has incorporated biology module into students' lab coursework. Here, with biological principle fully visualized, participating educators saw lab grade averages climb near 10%.
Partnerships with Honor Health for ASU's new medical school have opened possibilities for virtual surgical procedures to train healthcare providers of tomorrow in a risk-free environment. Arizona State University has announced the laboratories and classrooms it constructs to meet the needs of Arizona must incorporate the innovative technologies of tomorrow. Virtual reality will be at the forefront of this effort.
We spoke to ASU Next Lab, a team dedicated to the exploration of emerging technologies, potential within education, to learn more about the opportunity presented by VR.
A big part of it is this experiential learning that a lot of students and just people in general benefit from. If you are experiencing something, you're more likely to retain information and remember it rather than sitting in a lecture and like absorbing stuff. that way and like taking notes. So it's like a different style of learning.
Unfortunately, virtual reality headsets remain an expensive prospect. Though the cost of HMDs have fallen considerably, widespread adoption might stretch already underfunded secondary and primary education systems. Moreover, practical concerns over comfort and accessibility of virtual reality have only accelerated. Motion sickness and disabilities might blunt the immersive experience VR seeks to provide. Questions have been raised over privacy guidelines, as fingerprints, retina scans, and other biometric data might be harvested. Researchers have even identified ostensibly anonymous users simply by tracking their motion, recorded by VR devices. Higher education, however, may present the answer by pushing policymakers to adopt universal technical and privacy standards. In addition, the patronage of VR in STEM by institutions like Arizona State University has demonstrated to school districts with fewer resources the feasibility and importance of VR implementation.
As of 2024, the Meta Quest 2 sold roughly 20 million units, a figure comparable to the sales of the Xbox Series X. The immersive potential of virtual reality in entertainment has undeniably emerged. Over half of American adults have experienced virtual reality firsthand, and over 53 million own a headset themselves. These HMDs, once luxuries, are gradually becoming a household item, no different than the radio, smartphone, and television.
Crucially, however, just as these technologies were first used for entertainment, we believe widespread VR adoption will disseminate into the education sector, especially as accessibility expands and associated technologies evolve. At ASU, haptics has become a key focus. Haptics provide touch sensory feedback, the shake in your controller, or the buzzer on your iPhone. Ira A. Fulton's School of Engineering has begun research on people's response to various haptic signals, building off prior research from autonomous hugging robots. This research will only accelerate the immersive potential unlocked by VR. The role that government should and ultimately will play within the virtual world is heavily debated. Some futurists worry about the effects unrestricted private influence might have on the metaverse, ignored and unregulated by government authorities. Others consider the potential of virtual reality as a tool of government control and shape their policy recommendations accordingly. International organizations like the European Parliament have encouraged industry-wide collaboration to resolve ethical and technical questions, but the overregulation could limit the flexibility innovators need. Meanwhile, in the US, funding concerns pose a different kind of threat to technological advancement, as groups like the National Science Foundation freeze grants in 2025. Ultimately, balanced policy approaches that both foster innovation while protecting ethical standards are necessary for VR's future.
Within virtual reality, there are primary actors we have identified. Chief among them are community actors, which seek to adapt and improve VR for separate mandates like health or education outcomes.
These actors, primarily academic, also work to improve the various individual technologies which comprise VR. Take Arizona State University, for example, with its extensive incorporation of VR into biology programs and research into haptics. Additionally, commercial actors like Meta or Apple work to incorporate these improved technologies into affordable retail merchandise. Finally, security actors work to directly influence the regulatory and policy atmosphere surrounding VR for the public good. Oftentimes, these stakeholders are governmental or nonprofits. STEM education, even education in general, is only one field VR might transform. Ask yourself, how could VR transform your sector today? What about 10 years from now?